Howdy, Lao Shi Lawrence McElroy here for Water Tiger School Taijiquan. Back again in the Tai Chi side of our rotation, and pretty much on time this time out at 3 weeks. So we're going to have a focus in Tai Chi. We'll talk about that. It's going to be tiger's mouth. But let's start with the shirt. You may think that you have seen this before. Right? If at first you don't succeed, try doing what the Lao Shi told you to do the first time. However, the shirt that you saw in the January 2nd video that was Wu Wei in Tai Chi, instead of Lao Shi, had what your Tai Chi instructor told you to do the first time. Both shirts, both siblings, were gifts to me for making somebody's September seem less sucky. I was talking with a student about September, and he was talking about how bad of a month it was, and I reminded him that he started with Water Tiger in September. And these two t-shirts were his thank yous. So, Mike, I'm grateful for your thanks. I love my shirts. So there you go. We're going to start with a warm-up, and then we're going to spend time, like I said, well, not really in the tiger's mouth, but focusing on the tiger's mouth. You're going to need a little something to hold on to, which sort of brings me to some purposefully set things back here and the signs. I believe they've been here. This might be the third video that they've been in. I am turning over planning, coordinating, and hosting World Tai Chi Day. Last year was 25 years of doing it. I decided to step back. There's a committee in place now planning the Long Island, annual Long Island Tai Chi event in Suffolk County. They want the signs. Somebody's supposed to come and get them. They haven't yet. So that's why the signs. The rest of the stuff is here on purpose, because we're going to be using weaponry. Ideally, you should, if you have any access to any sort of version of a straight sword, as far as a Tai Chi straight sword or Jian, it doesn't have to be. This is a practice blade, so it's not sharp. I won't touch the blade anyway. Stainless steel. And funny thing, I've had many people over the years, when I bring it to an event for a demonstration, is that a real sword? It's like, no, it's an illusion. I don't really have anything in my hand. It's a real sword. It's just not a sharp blade. It's not a live blade. And by the way, yes, there is no tassel. There's a reason for that. That one doesn't have a tassel either. You'll notice the Dao, the broadsword, does have its ribbons. We have cats. This, where we shoot this isn't the studio where I teach. However, I do sometimes do a remote class from this space. This is my training area in the basement of my townhouse. We have cats. For some reason, the cats don't bother the ribbons, but they do bother the tassels. So I have to remove my tassels. I do know of some instructors who, like, the first thing they do when a student gets a new sword is tell them to take the tassel off because it gets in the way. That's why the tassel's there, so you can learn how to not allow it to get in the way. But anyway, straight sword would be ideal. I'm going to go ahead and resheathe that. In lieu of a straight sword, it's not ideal, but it would work for the purposes of what we're doing. A yardstick. This is actually sort of a go-to, I know, for some instructors when they're teaching in a location where they can't have weapons. I remember a fellow Tai Chi instructor back in the Midwest when I was living there. He worked for a major corporation in the city of Des Moines, Iowa, and he ran a Tai Chi program as a wellness program for their corporation. And the neighboring office buildings called his class outside during the summer, called his class students the stick people. But it serves. In our sort of intro to Jian back in the day, that's what I suggested people use. You could use a short staff, not ideal for this purpose, but it could work. A Dao or a broadsword, also possible. But you want something that you can be able to grip. So if you need to, now might be the time to hit pause and go get that thing, whatever it is, if it's not readily available. So I'm going to finish my mince, because of course I have mince. Now, it's a thing, if you've never been with us before, you can get a drink. And our warm-up, as they have been recently, is going to come from the first set of Shibashi. Before I go any further, you know, if you've been watching this series, that I have to say, Shibashi seems to be the more prominent pronunciation of the name of the set. However, research also revealed that the proper pronunciation is probably Shibashi. And people also sort of dispute the translation. Some people say it means 18 movements. Some people say it means 18. Regardless, Lin Haosheng was the person who created Shibashi, starting in 1979. Lin is a very well-known Qigong practitioner, and apparently, according to the history that we've read, he came into Tai Chi and decided he wanted to put what he knew about Qigong together with what he was learning about Tai Chi, and he created the first set. From 1979 to 1999, he ended up creating 8 sets. That's according to his website, because you'll also see a lot of information out there is that there are 6 sets, but there are 8. And apparently the first 3 are the most popular, the first one over the other 2 more so. Generally speaking, most people come to Shibashi because 1, it's relatively easy to learn. 2, it's just good for overall good health and wellness. And 3, it's kind of fun to do. You just feel nice and energized and good and happy when you do the set. But all the pieces, all 18, have very specific health benefits. Today, we're going to do what is number 4 for us, and I think number 4 for almost everybody, but there are different names. We call it Parting the Clouds. Other people, I'm going to read my cue cards here as best I can, because we put them in a bad location. Gather Qi and separate the clouds. Circling arms. Circling arms, separate clouds. And simply separating clouds. Now, I'm sure there are many other names out there, but those are the ones that we create, that we use to create a list today. Now the health benefits. I'm also going to go to the cue cards for those. Relieve shoulder pain and boost stamina. I always stumble over that word. Stimulates the kidneys, benefits lungs and heart, and improves blood circulation. Beneficial for chronic fatigue syndrome. Improves and strengthens the stability of the lower body, waist, and legs. Strengthens the heart and lungs. The arm movements flush out qi along the arm meridians, and particularly the heart, lung, and pericardium meridians in the chest. That's very interesting, because the movement for parting the clouds resembles very closely the movement that we do for, it was the Tao that just shifted. I didn't want it to come crashing down. I'm going to move it over here. To the second piece of our Tai Chi Qigong breathing set, expand the chest to cleanse the body. So again, remember, particularly good for the heart, lungs, and pericardium meridians in the chest. That's why I made that comparison. There are some differences. And by the way, some people refer to Shibashi as Tai Chi Qigong, but they do that because of the way it was created, that it was based in Tai Chi Chuan and Qigong combined. And Tai Chi Qigong, the breathing set, comes from an approach that's called Tai Chi Qigong, because it's simply it's Qigong based in Yin Yang principle, in Taoist principle. So anyway, all the Shibashi sets pieces have some sort of sink and rise. So we have this little Oompa Loompa thing going on. And if you don't know what I mean by Oompa Loompa, Google it. And it should be an exhale, sinking down, excuse me, and an inhale rising up. And I'm going to slow that down a little bit. But I'm not, I'm not getting too low into the lower body, but an exhale down and an inhale up. Just like people have different names, people will have different ways of doing the movement, but more importantly, different breath patterns, since I was just talking about breath patterns. So this is the lower body movement. The upper body movement is going to involve a little arc and look up. So be careful if you have issues in your spine. And the arm movement, I'm going to start down with an exhalation. And then I'm going to inhale, leading with the palms mostly, and then exhale down. And this is parting the clouds from the first set of Shibashi. Inhale up, exhale down. And I'm not going to count reps. Inhale up, I'm just going to go for a while. Exhale down. Inhale up. I may have just messed up my staggered crossing of the arms. Inhale up. So maybe my head will explode, I'm not sure. Exhale down. Inhale up. Exhale down. Inhale up. I just did it again. Exhale down. Inhale up. Remember the arc. Exhale down. Breathe when you have to. Don't force your breath into this pattern. If you have to breathe more often. I'm just going to breathe and move for a little while. I'm thinking about 6 more. About 5 more. About 4 more. About 3 more. About 2 more. And 1 more. I'm not going to cross again. I'm going to change into palm floating down position. I'm going to find my standard height from my breath. And now Shibashi has its own set closing. Whenever we pull out a single piece, we always do the traditional closing for Water Tiger School. So I'm going to find my right foot. That's this one. Don't do a mirror image of me. Find your own right foot. That's the one that's going to take the weight. The left foot, again, not a mirror image of me, but your actual left foot is the one, and leg is what gives up the weight. So as the arms float up, out, away from the body, I'm going to settle my alignment, my balance, my structure, and my weight through my right leg into the earth. That allows, as the hands come in, for that left foot to sort of float in. I'm going to press down. And notice I'm lengthening here a little bit, because that gives me a little bit of room to set back down into my lower body, to set back down into my lower body, to set down, back down into my lower body. And that little downward movement pulls my hands to the acupuncture point for the Xia Dantian. And there is the 4th piece from the first set of Shibashi as our warm-up today. So good. Before we get to the tiger's mouth, I'm going to talk about grip when it comes to things Tai Chi and weaponry. There's a certain tendency that we have, especially beginning students, of very much really holding on to the hilt. Now think about that, right? If my hand is gripping tight, then if I need to change how I'm holding the sword, I have to release that tension. That's an added movement, an added thing that I have to do. But if it's nice and loose, then if I do have to either grip it suddenly or change the grip or move into the tiger's mouth, it's very easy to do. I think the standard that I've heard over the years is always, you're holding the weapon as if you're holding a baby bird. Though I've also seen, like you're holding a butterfly, you don't want to squish it. I believe the butterfly image, instead of the baby bird, comes from Bill Douglas, and one of the editions of his Complete Idiot's Guide to Tai Chi and Qigong. We tried to find it before we went to video today, but we couldn't find it. But we want that nice, loose, changeable grip. And that's the same. Doesn't matter if it's the straight sword, if it's the Dao or broadsword. Yes, there are probably times you need to grip it hard, but most of the time you want that nice, open, light grip so you can move the sword around and change the way you're holding it based on where the sword is. We always have to adapt. Like the wrist moves differently as you move differently. The weapon is just an extension of your arm. And it doesn't matter if it's a bladed weapon or what I would refer to as a bludgeoning weapon. Still, again, times I'm going to want to grip hard, but most of the time it's a loose grip, so you can make changes with the weapon. So that's grip. The tiger's mouth, as you probably know, is this space. I've always referred it more as to the space than anything else. It's the reference to the ability of the thumb and the index finger to open up like the wide mouth of a tiger. I've used tiger's mouth often as just a joke. You've probably, way back, I think it's one of the early Facebook Live videos, forgot to do research on that, where we introduced Shaolin Qinna hand exercises, or anytime that we've done that, we've done the stretches. The second stretch is take the thumb of one hand, place it in the wrist fold of the other hand, wrap your fingers around the back of that hand, and then gently pull back. So the thumb sort of acts as a fulcrum, also a little bit of a buffer there, so you don't pull too far. But a lot of people, when they're first introduced to that, instead of putting their thumb in the wrist fold, no matter what words we use, they put their thumb between the thumb and the index finger of the hand that they're stretching. That's not the same thing, and it's a very ineffective stretch, actually. So I use the tiger's mouth. I say, no, not two tigers kissing. One tiger is biting the other tiger on the throat. A little bit of water tiger jokiness. So to us, delicate lady hand is just that relaxed hand. This is a relaxed hand. Delicate lady hand, beautiful lady hand, it's relaxed. And the space isn't wide open, but it's relaxed, so it can open wide if it needs to. So you can grab. If the thumb is tense and pulled back, again, you'd have to release it to do anything with it. You can't grab with the thumb out there. You can grab with the thumb opened up slightly, which it does pretty much naturally, unless you've had damage to the hand, the index finger, the thumb, the little fold that's in there, etc. So there's that. But that's what we mean when we talk about the tiger's mouth, that space. How do we utilize the tiger's mouth? By the way, the opposable thumb is what allows us to pretty much do human things with human tools. The tiger's mouth is important when it comes to, especially with the Jian. The Jian is known as a weapon of finesse. So it's the tiger's mouth where a lot of the finesse comes from. So notice in that movement, going from an extension into a contraction, into a drawing in, it's really just between the thumb and the index finger. That's important. From this position to this position, here, everything is relaxed and open. If you're in this position, if I have the hand closed and tight, I'm really out of room here at this point. My bicep is really flexed. My triceps are starting to tighten. And to come in like that, this is just solid. Now, it's relaxed. It's still active, but it's relaxed. More importantly, and probably more difficultly, is a twirl. And that twirl, notice, I'm going to I'm going to watch the screen here. No, that's not going to work. I thought that would work. I'm going to come down here. So, and I'm going to move this. I'm awfully close to the wall. Right? I'm maybe 12 inches away from it. I'd like to get closer, but I can't because of the banner. But notice how that sword stays on one path. Now, I know some people don't put a lot of joy, not joy, that's not right. They don't like it when people spin. But there are times, for instance, in our standard oxidized, not oxidized, orthodox. Where did oxidized come from? There are actual spins. One of them is coming out of a tap and then to lift the curtain. But we want that, again, governance of the blade, that from that tap and that spin, that it's not moving closer to the camera, and it's right down beside me. So, how does that happen? I'm pressing the sword into the base of my index finger with just my thumb. And I'm rotating my wrist. So the wrist has to be open and relaxed. The grip has to be pretty much not there except for the tiger's mouth. And that's the idea of being able, not the idea, but that's necessary to learn how to utilize that space. The flexibility of your wrist, the flexibility of your arm, and the intent to move the blade in one place and to control it. So, to govern it, better word. So it stays in that one plane. Too many people, again, keep some sort of grip. And when you keep some sort of grip and not rely entirely on the tiger's mouth, the sword's going to swing out. But you want to be able to, left or right, to utilize that space. Press carefully, right? Get accustomed to using that space. I mean, the tiger's mouth too, and the tap. The tap is a simple kind of letting the point fall. And all it is the thumb keeping the sword from going that way, and the index finger as the fulcrum, as the thumb was in the wrist flex, in the wrist stretch. So this one's a rather short video, but I've been wanting to do something on tiger's mouth, and we thought we would. So, loose grip, so it can change. And a lot of times the loose grip means almost no grip at all. So you have to get familiar with that space between the thumb and the index finger and be able to utilize it in such a way that you don't lose the sword. By the way, another thing about a tight grip, if you're holding something tight, somebody hits it hard, it's going to vibrate out of your hand. Doesn't matter if it's a staff, a sword, or whatever, but a loose grip allows you to adjust to the impact and still hold on to your weapon. Nice, open, loose space and strength between the thumb and the index finger. It doesn't hurt to work on the other fingers too. So as always, hope you enjoyed today's video. I hope it made a little bit of sense. I know from experience that that kind of play, that kind of detail is sort of sometimes hard to glean in a two-dimensional environment. But maybe the close-ups, maybe going back and looking at it. If you are challenged by utilizing the tiger's mouth in that fashion, to explore where you need to strengthen your ability in that light governance, that finesse of, and although, you know, the straight sword is known for its finesse, all the weapons require a certain degree of finesse. Otherwise, you're just holding and moving this appliance in your hand. Water Tiger always talks about how, you know, when somebody does progress into a weapons form, that we hand a student a weapon, and then the rest of the study is taking the weapon away from them. Only what we mean by that is allowing the weapon to become a part of them. I used the image earlier that the weapon is an extension of your arm. It's not something you're holding in your hand. It's an extension of your arm. If you're a Game of Thrones fan, you know Syrio Forel and Arya Stark, and Arya asks Syrio Forel, "What happens if I drop my sword? Would you drop your arm?" And on that note, thanks for your time and attention again. I hope you found this informative, as short as it is. As always, you know, our comments are supposed to be screened before they're posted. We always make that choice when we upload the video. Sometimes YouTube does that. Sometimes it doesn't, and it goes to post. And that the only reason is their spam filters don't work very well. And in the early days, we got a lot of spam. So we started doing that, and it did eliminate spam. But sometimes comments go through without us previewing. We're not previewing to get rid of negative comments, but, you know, and we'll take any constructive criticism. And by the way, any topics you want us to address, that too is a possibility. As a matter of fact, it's sort of what's triggered Wu Wei and Tai Chi at the first of the year, because somebody commented about how we incorporate Taoism into the Water Tiger School program. So we did the Wu Wei and Tai Chi video. So anyway, you know, if you flame us, then probably the comment won't stay up and you won't have access to our channel anymore. We do also post a link to this on our Facebook page, Water Tiger Tai Chi. And of course, it's a little bit more free range. Well, a lot more free range these days. on Facebook. But again, if you flame us, the comment's not going to stay up and you'll be banned. So, but constructive criticism, fine, go for it. Probably shouldn't have said go for it. Thanks for your time and attention. We'll be back to our Qigong series. We're continuing the diversity in Qigong with the standing 8 piece of brocade. We're getting fairly close to the end of that. We only have, I think, off the top of my head, 2 or 3 pieces left. I think maybe we're at only 2 at this point. So we've done 6 of those. And then we're going to have to find another topic because that one's been fun. We've really enjoyed doing those videos for the standing 8 piece of brocade and the research behind them. So again, thanks for your time and attention. We'll catch you next time, ideally in 3 weeks, but I might be off on that because we have a scheduling conflict in March, and that's pretty close to probably what the 3-week mark is. So we might be back to 4 weeks. I apologize. We should have made note of that before we went on the air, but not really on the air, but one in front of the camera. So it might be 4 weeks, but we'll be back with something from the standing 8 piece of brocade. Ta.